Hello, I'm here to spend a little time talking with you about my career path into the field of psychedelic medicine. So, to begin with, as is relatively understood at this point, oftentimes career paths are determined based off of individual interests, values, goals, and my basic story is not particularly any different. Um, so I personally had a reasonable share of early life traumatic experiences and what they call adverse childhood experiences or ACEs. And the trajectory that my childhood set me on took a very sharp turn, I would say, around the age 20, 19 or 20 or so, when I began to experiment with psychedelic medicine. Um, the degree to which I found myself more capable of introspection, communication, and I would say healthy interactions with others and even with myself in ways. Um, the way that that shifted or transitioned through my experiences, early psychedelic experiences, cannot be overstated. um, I determined at that time I'd really enjoy working with them, with others, and helping facilitate experiences similar to my own. However, there was a distinct lack of clear um, directionality in terms of making that a career path and what avenues of, say, study and or credentialing that might facilitate that. And at the time, it was quite a bit more stigmatized than it currently is, although there's still a good deal of stigma being worked with in the field. And so I found myself kind of in an extended undergrad program where I was studying things that I found of interest and broadening my capacity to understand various facets of the lived human experience. However, that wasn't necessarily setting the stage or the groundwork, let's say, is probably better for success in a career path so much as it was enriching my capacity to live life. Um, so after some time of that and not really finishing school with any clear direction in mind, I did discover CIIS in San Francisco through a friend. And upon doing a little bit of research, I learned that year they were offering the nation's premier certification in psychedelic research studies. The requisites for enrollment in this certification program were pretty clear. State licensure in a counseling psychology discipline, which itself has its own set of requirements. So basically, kind of starting with that midpoint line and working backwards, um, I determined that a um, appropriate pathway towards achieving some of my goals in this um, direction would be to enroll in the bachelor completion program that CIS offered, which seemed in many ways tailored to students such as myself who had a wide range of credits and needed to kind of like focus and get the graduation certificate done so they could move on to the next part of their academic growth. So I did the year program, completed that, was very happy with a lot of the connections I made and resetting of some of the pedagogy I'd experienced from traditional four-year university and community college. I should say I did receive an associate's before going on to the BAC, but I don't really know that any many difference ever, truthfully. Um, so currently I'm in third year of somatic master's program in practicum. Practicum, of course, being a requirement for graduation, graduation being a requirement for working under a licensure to gain your own hours towards your own licensure, all of which is required, of course, as I stated a little while ago, to enroll in the psychedelic therapies research program. So all that to be said to kind of set the stage, my intentions moving forward, beyond widening and deepening my clinical practice over the next several years while I'm working towards licensure, is to take the experiences that I had for many years, like a decade plus worth of facilitating psychedelic um, events and experiences for other individuals, and begin to, from that, distill new modalities that lend themselves to availability, generally only within the psychedelic altered conscious state. So currently, it's very common for psychedelic assisted therapy to be a chosen modality of therapy that then is interacted with or performed, what have you, under the influence of whichever substance is the active substance is being worked with in the assisted therapy, which is great and has shown a lot of promise, particularly in treating treatment-resistant cases. That being stated, what we're looking at with that is basically existing modalities being augmented by a particular medicine. Many people who have had their own forays into that, or those sets of medicines on their own, can report that there are certain awarenesses, let's say, or spaces in consciousness that seem to be only accessible from that direction rather than the traditional or conventional sober mindset. The altered conscious state seems to allow bypassing of certain fundamental mechanisms within the default manner in which the brain is self-associating, allowing for opportunities that simply don't present themselves otherwise. And while taking advantage of what those opportunities may bring to existing modalities is interesting, and certainly has a great amount of value in the medical field, I'm personally a lot more focused on developing and teasing out modalities that do not exist yet and can only exist in conjunction with psychedelic medicine. This is a new frontier, in a sense, where whole aspects of the human experiential collective is working its way through a kind of great chain of being within an individual into the very ground of said being in the body. So somatically linking some of the most primordial experiences that are substrate to a lot of what we think of as ourself, and in that space connecting into a lot of what is a self that we are discovering, I suppose, in the process. It's a self that's there always, kind of beneath the self of the self we believe ourselves to be. And while some of the languaging surrounding that would likely draw from historical representations in non-dualist traditions, the medical languaging and jargon surrounding it simply doesn't really exist yet. Cosmological inference for the individual consciousness and the way that that plays itself directly into psychiatric medicine through psychedelic possibility is a space that, frankly, many are rightfully apprehensive about entering too quickly and without proper experience, particularly when they're coming from the clinical perspective. You can always go a little deeper. It's difficult to take back some deepness that's already been gone into. So looking forward, as the horizon becomes closer to the present in terms of psychedelic psychiatrics, the need for a greater level of understanding in terms of both psychoeducation and experiential validation from individuals within the field who are credentialed and yet also having these profound experiences, and bringing a type of languaging to them that doesn't exist yet, because it's generally we're dealing with spaces that are subjective and looking for an objective connection to objective connection to be able to language or vocalize in a way that that information can be agreed upon by multiple parties. It's quite clear that the half a century ban on research in this area has greatly set that propensity back. So in the interim of legislation situating itself to allow a greater availability for research into psychedelic use and a greater availability of psychedelics for the general public to use in conjunction with qualified practitioners, there is a need for a greater level of information to be provided, both for the average member of the public who might benefit from these medicines, and expressly and explicitly, and certainly for potential caregivers who are looking to either step into or transition into psychedelic medicine from wherever they are currently operating. And not only is there an entire set of additional, I'd say, responsibilities and good practices that need to be very rigorously built out and structured for the protection of clients and therapists alike, fine-tuning these programs for the individual substances which will be coming into use. Like right now we're looking at ketamine, MDMA, psilocybin on the horizon, one day mescaline, LSD, and other substances. Each one of these being similar but different may require particular types of training for individuals to be able to synergistically work with a sort of triune or triumvirate therapeutic alliance between the best healthful inclinations of the patient, the clinical intuition experience of the practitioner, and the innate potencies, potentials of the substance. So I'm looking very forward into helping just build out the breadth of our information about that through talking, sharing, writing, dialoguing, conversating, and other things. And in the long term, developing a set of liminal somatic disciplines that give average practitioners the tools not only to help their clients get deeper into the aspects of the sub and unconscious that are becoming conscious through the psychedelic experiences, but providing frameworks for individuals that are engaging with those therapies as patients to be able to get the most out of it for themselves. That's my overall summarization of my career path and plan, and I appreciate you for listening. Thank you.